Oh, well, here we go. Another week has once again come and gone. I feel like I'm doing these every day. That's how fast I feel like time's moving lately. It's good and bad. It's good because we're continuing to progress. I think we're learning from things we're doing. But it's bad because the open water season is trickling by and summer's almost done. We're looking at Labor Day weekend a week from now, which is absolutely insane. And then my kiddos go back to school the day after Labor Day. The Minnesota State Fair is going to be done. I did get a chance to work the fair on Thursday. Opening day was a blast. I did get to see a handful of you that actually came up and said, hey, I watch your fishing report. Thanks. So I really appreciate the feedback. I thoroughly enjoy doing these every week and just kind of digesting not only what I find to help you, but what I find to help myself. So I find that every week digesting what works and what doesn't work helps me as an angler also fine tune what I should or shouldn't be doing the following week. So help myself, hopefully helping some of you, and I do definitely enjoy these. So thanks for the feedback, really appreciate that. It was chilly the last couple days. I mean, here we are middle of the day and I'm still rocking hoodie. I got my shorts on, but I had a hoodie and sweatpants, actually a Blackfish gale on for a good portion of the morning today. It was, I don't know the exact temp. I think my truck said about 50 degrees when I was heading to the lake this morning. So it was definitely chilly out, which is fine. It's a little abnormal, I feel like, for middle, late August to see temperatures 15 degrees above freezing. But if you rewind earlier this week, we saw temperatures at around 100 degrees. I can tell you what, we set up the Minnesota State Fair on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I never sweat like I have those 2 days. It was insane. My boxers and shorts straight up felt like I went swimming and did not dry off for quite some time. And then we turned around on Thursday, opening day of the fair. It was actually pretty pleasant. And then Friday, it got even cooler. It was in the 70s. And then Saturday and Sunday, it was darn right cold most of the day. And again, here we are, rocking a sweatshirt midday on a Sunday, which is just kind of the nature of the beast. So how do we catch our fish? With these changing temperatures, what I did see is the water temp did not change a lot. Our surface temp might have fluctuated a bit, especially in the early morning hours. And that's something we have to continue to remember is when you look at that temperature on your Lowrance, that's your surface temperature. That's not uniform from top to bottom. I think we all understand that concept. These fish, a lot of times, especially on structure and rock piles and whatever it might be, weed lines, they're not affected near as much because they're seeing that uniform temperature, that temperature that's been stable down in that certain zone. So you're not seeing as much of a huge impact there. Now your shallow fish could see a little bit of a change. You might see them move out of those extreme shallow situations, expansive shallow lily pad fields, duckweed, shallow matted up stuff. They may transition in and out and make some changes. But most of your fish, which I'm considering in a summer pattern right now, are still doing their thing. They're still where they should be. They're still acting the same way. It's been pretty consistent. So how am I catching my fish? That being said, what I am doing though, it's not necessarily finding them in new spots. It's slowing down on how I catch these fish. So you saw last week we talked about a heavier jig, flipping, punching, moving, whatever. This week we slowed down. The all-terrain finesse jig got a ton of play on, got some little gunk on that thing still, a ton of play this week. So I threw a finesse jig, threw it quite a bit. It's a thinner wire hook, so it's a play off of the all-terrain jig. It doesn't have a rattle, it has a thinner wire hook, a little less skirt, changes profile, hair in the water. I'm still fishing that Mr. Twister pocket crop, but it just fishes a little slower, a little more fine-tuned approach. So I'm still targeting some of these same fish. I wasn't necessarily punching or flipping, but I'm fishing weed pockets, immediate weed lines, inside sand spots, things like that. And I was catching a lot of fish on the all-terrain finesse jig. And I'm fishing a 14-pound fluorocarbon line all the way up. You could fish a 17, so if you have it already rigged up with a 17, that's fine. This is actually a 14-pound fluorocarbon setup. I'm fishing a Shimano reel. I got 7-foot medium heavy rod. I'm not fishing a heavy action. I'm not quite fishing a medium. I'm fishing a 7-foot, actually a 7.2 medium heavy rod. And away you go. I can fish a weed line, I can flip it around a dock, I can fish some cover. I do have a very substantial weed guard, very versatile presentation, just a smaller, slower, more fine-tuned, more focused approach for catching these bass. That worked well. Another presentation that I did really well on this week too, a lot of times you're fishing a Ned rig or a Jig Worm. I actually took a hybrid of both, and I'll show you what really worked well for me. I talked about this last year a little bit. It has emerged again this year. You have the Tri-Alive crawler from Mr. Twister, right? Pretty good size presentation, 6.5 inches, fairly long, really resembles a shaky worm, whatever. You have your Mighty Head. I'm taking some of the smaller weights, some of the lighter weights. I'm not taking the heavier stuff. And what I'm doing with this is I'm combining the two, but I'm taking an inch or so off of this Tri-Alive crawler. I'm discarding that. Now I'm threading that on there, just like so. I'll show you once I get this up and at them, and you'll see what I'm doing. So I'm putting that up there. Now I have myself, I consider this kind of an in-between Ned Jig Worm, right? So now I got about a 4.5, 5-inch presentation. It's not a little stubby Ned, and it's not a bigger, gaudy Jig Worm. Thin wire, lighter jig, and I'm kind of giving myself the best of both worlds. And I've seen it where there's days where these fish either want a Ned or they want a Jig Worm, right? I've seen very distinct days where the Ned drastically outproduces the Jig Worm, or vice versa on the same spot. We don't often think about that. We think they should eat both. I have absolutely seen one work better than the other. This to me is kind of that hybrid between the two, and I have caught a pile of fish on this. 15-pound braided main line, 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. Pitch it to the structure, feed it line, let it go down and do its thing. Give it a hop, because this thing will come up and swim a little bit, unlike a Ned, which is designed to just make contact with the bottom. Jig Worm triggers fish a lot of times on the fall or on the snap. Best of both worlds in my opinion. So that Mighty Head Tri-Alive crawler nip down caught a pile of fish for us this week on rock, on weed lines, on a number of different situations, conditions, and structure. That was hot. That worked really well for me. Otherwise, we just kind of covered water. We caught some fish on wacky rigs. We caught some fish on chatterbaits. We caught some fish skipping around docks. We caught some fish wherever. We had to really play the elements. We had a lot of wind again this week. Wind is kind of becoming a factor. It was pretty slicked out today. This weekend was pretty slicked out. Yesterday, Saturday, it picked up and it got pretty chilly in the afternoon, but I was not on the water. I drove by a lake to go visit my buddy Dalton and his wife. My kids got to go horseback riding. I drove by a lake and I said to myself, I don't want to be out there. It was like 70 degrees, 65 degrees, blowing, not a lick of sun, slight mist here and there. I'm like, nope. Those whitecaps don't look fun right now. I'm not ready for that. I will be hopefully in the next month, but I wasn't yesterday. So that's kind of what we saw this week. I'm expecting this next week to kind of be the same. I'm going to spend a bunch of time on Minnetonka. I got some trips out there. I'll revert back to hopefully some Minnetonka pattern. I have not spent a lot of time on Tonka in the last week or two. I've been kind of everywhere else, Chisago area, Forest Lake, West Metro, that sort of stuff. But I'll be back on Tonka. I'll give you a Tonka report a week from now after a handful of days of being out there. Hopefully those fish are cooperating. Who knows? That lake can sometimes be an anomaly. The second you think you figured them out, bang, they smack you in the face and you have no clue what to do. I think a lot of you can relate to that. So that's how I'm fishing. Not necessarily changing where I'm catching my fish. I'm just changing how I'm catching my fish. Slowing down with the finesse jig, modifying Jig Worm Ned rig, things like that. Drop shot continues to work well, and away we go. So we're experiencing late summer patterns. It is what it is. Can't predict the weather. Looks like we have a very stable week ahead of us. Should be consistent in rock and roll. Get out there catching fish. Have some fun. Enjoy the remaining days of your summer. Hard to believe we're looking at Labor Day the next time we come back at you. So go out there, have some fun, be safe, and enjoy the rest of your August.